Welcome to Mulready Minutes with Oklahoma Insurance Commissioner Glen Mulready. This is a podcast about insurance for insurance folks, risk managers, and business leaders. We'll dive deep, examine what is and isn't working, talk to leaders in the industry, and keep you informed on what's happening in Oklahoma and around the country.
Hi, welcome to another Mulready Minute podcast. We are excited today to have a national expert with us flew in from Columbus, Ohio to be with us. We're going to talk health insurance today. So there's a lot happening in that space, lots that we can cover. We won't be able to cover all of that, but a lot of question marks out there. But before I do that, let me just read a little bio so everyone knows exactly who Miranda is. Miranda joined America Health Insurance Plans in 2020 as the Senior Vice President of State Affairs and Policy, leading the association's state policy, advocacy, and political engagement. She previously served as the president and CEO of the Ohio Association of Health Plans for more than 8 years, where she positioned the organization as a trusted voice with policymakers and stakeholders. Earlier, Miranda practiced law at Bricker and Eckler, representing insurers and trade associations on legislative and regulatory issues. She holds a BA in political science and history from Anderson University and a JD from Capital University Law School. Miranda, welcome.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for having me.
We are glad to have you here, and that national expertise and things that I just read about, that'll be really helpful. So let's start off with, we've had the ACA for 14 years now, 13, 14 years now. There are a lot of question marks up in the air right now about what's going to happen in this next enrollment period. Lots of impact with national bills, with the federal bills that have happened. That's unfortunate because you'd like to think that after that many years, we're kind of just rolling through this. But tell me, you represent the health plans that are out there, and they're having to respond to this. Tell me about what the feel is out there with the health plans, and they are being asked to turn on a dime on some things at this moment. So how are they reacting, and what are you seeing?
Yeah. So first of all, again, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here in Oklahoma City. As you said, certainly there is a lot of activity right now. I think as we sit here today, we're 65 days out from open enrollment, which begins on November 1st. So really the conversation that we're going to have here today is super timely. Just a quick note, you mentioned AHIP. I have to sort of, make sure that the folks in the audience and the listeners understand AHIP. They are the National Trade Association, as you said, that represent the health insurance industry. We have more than 120 plans. And really the significance of that is they're health insurers that are providing coverage to individuals, to employers, to seniors, to families across all markets. So again, just, so thankful for the opportunity. This will be a certainly significant open enrollment. Certainly with the potential expiration of the enhanced premium tax credits, which we know have brought such affordability, put downwards pressure on costs for so many Americans purchasing health care. And that has also helped to really stabilize markets all across this country. And, with that uncertainty, causes a lot of concern. Our concern certainly with respect to consumers and being able to continue to afford health care in the insurance marketplace. One thing that we do know is in 2025, 24 million Americans who didn't get their health care from their employers, who didn't get their health care from Medicare or Medicaid, were able to purchase health care in the individual market. And so, that includes, all of those constituencies that I talked about, small businesses, entrepreneurs, individuals, families. And so all of that uncertainty as it relates to whether those will be extended, whether Congress will act, which they need to act to extend those, is really important for Americans all across this country, and certainly individuals living here in Oklahoma.
Yeah. So you make the point that, if you take a look at the whole landscape, you have a certain percentage of our population on Medicare, you have a certain amount of our population on Medicaid, and then large portion commercially or, through their employer. The biggest impact at this moment that we're talking about is the individual marketplace here in Oklahoma. We've got a little over 300,000 folks enrolled through the individual. That's where they're buying their coverage. And I know I've been asked a lot, so just to clarify for anyone listening or watching, what's going to or was scheduled to terminate is the enhanced premium tax credits, not all tax credits.
Correct.
To assist with those with a lower income. And so it's those enhanced that went into place through the Inflation Reduction Act and some other things, and then got extended and extended. They were set to expire, but extended. And now here we are with this next one that is set to expire December 31st. And at this point, nothing has been extended. And that will have a big impact. I know here in Oklahoma, you may not know Oklahoma detail there, but we're estimating 30 to 40% of those folks. And we're talking 100,000 people choosing not to purchase health insurance when that assistance, those tax credits go away. Unfortunately, you've been in this world long enough, you know that population is going to be the younger, healthier population who is going to choose not to take coverage. And that is a critical part of the pool. That's going to offset those folks who are having lots of claims, and that's the way insurance works.
Right.
So we'd like to think that things are going to go smoothly. Currently, I know things are being talked about at D.C. to try to make some impact. I guess in the ideal world with the health plans, they'd love to see those premium tax credits extended, I would think, and I don't want to assume too much, at least beyond where this would be a frantic push. I mean, I think it's really unreasonable to try to make changes at this point. Would you say 65 days till enrollment? Rates are already filed in our state, in all states. I guess we've got a data correction. I don't guess, but there's a time period coming September 11th and 12th. It's just very late in the game to make changes. So is there an ideal situation that the plans would love to see how this would play out? Would it just be an extension of those tax credits this year and then work on it? I know as soon as we get past this open enrollment.
Well, I think certainly from the health plan perspective, our view is really wanting to make sure that individuals have access to affordable care. I mentioned the 24 million individuals who access that care in the individual market. Certainly from a timing perspective, you mentioned all of the sort of rate filing deadlines. Certainly notices will be sent from health plans out to consumers here really soon. And all of those deadlines have a significant impact on how individuals are going to shop, whether they decide to forego coverage or, how that's going to impact their family finances as it relates to making really important healthcare decisions. And it's not just those individuals, but I mentioned how many small employers are also accessing health insurance for their employees through those markets. And so there's, really big decisions. Because of the timing associated with, you alluded to it, the rate filings, the notices that have to go out, Congress acting before September 30th is really important. You mentioned the enhanced premium tax credits expire at the end of the year. And while it is a December 31st deadline, the decisions that have to be made now relative to those rate filings are having an impact. Again, not only from individuals who are shopping, and, I always hate to sort of read from a piece of paper, but I do think just sort of hearing and understanding, is it allowed? Thank you. Because I do think just hearing for a normal family, a couple who's 60 years old, hearing what that impact actually is going to mean. And that impact, although we're all thinking the end of the year, these are impacts that they're going to see through notices when open enrollment starts in 65 days. These are the prices that they're going to see. So for a typical family of four making $125,000, they're going to see their health insurance premiums increase by $7,700. $7,700. For a family of four making $64,000, so about half of that, it's going to be $2,600. For that 60-year-old couple that I talked about, that has an income of $80,000. Their premiums are going to skyrocket by $17,500. So we're talking a significant impact. And that is, individuals, again, living all across this country, individuals living in Oklahoma. And I think the other thing, and you alluded to this, but as individuals are actually shopping for health care that they need and rely upon, if individuals make decisions going in on November 1st and looking at how much health insurance is going to cost, they may make decisions about foregoing that health insurance. Mm-hmm. And as you know, those decisions, particularly for individuals that may be healthier and younger, that are currently part of an insurance risk pool, as those individuals forego that decision, that risk pool, the acuity level, or they're sicker, right? And so that then, in and of itself, regardless of the cost increases that I just mentioned, that risk pool is going to cost more from a health care coverage perspective, from the
for those that stay in the pool.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so it's this, really concerning ripple effect that will start way before December the 31st. And so it's really about those notices that are going to go out to consumers soon, the information that they're going to get going into that, the actual platforms, and trying to make plan decisions, trying to understand what their own personal finances are and whether they can afford it.
Yeah.
Is going to come very soon.
You used the term ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Just reminds me that I think it was end of February, maybe the first part of March, where I sent a letter out to our state leadership, to the governor, the speaker, the pro tem, as well as our federal delegation, and then issued a press release. And internally, I called it, I just feel like we need to wave the flag, because I don't know that this is on people's radar. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't as much really even about those individuals' premiums increases. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone can figure out if a subsidy goes away, mm-hmm. that's going to go up. But it was about the ripple effect of, let's call it 100,000 more uninsured people here in Oklahoma, uncompensated care presenting at hospitals, especially impacting rural hospitals, but really was just trying to draw the attention to the ripple effect of these changes. And I wasn't even suggesting any solution to that, just trying to bring that to their attention. So let me back up a minute, and because we also have this, I don't want to call it a perfect storm, but we have those going away.
And I think you did call it a perfect storm back then. I remember that phrase perfectly.
But we also are seeing now substantial rate increases, separate and apart from the tax credits going away, based on healthcare costs and based on morbidity out there. Talk a little bit about what's happening generally about healthcare costs.
Certainly. So, I say all the time, the cost of health insurance is a reflection of what it costs to purchase healthcare. Mm-hmm. So if you are seeing upwards pressure on health insurance costs, that means there is pressure on the underlying cost of healthcare. And so you have to really look at what those underlying cost drivers are in healthcare. At AHIP, we have put out the last few years a really good tool, because we think it's really important for people to understand where their premium dollar goes. Mm-hmm. And the most recent healthcare dollar reflects that almost a quarter of that dollar goes to prescription drugs. Taken collectively, almost 40 cents of every dollar goes to provider costs, whether that's hospitals, whether that's doctors' offices. And so, we really look at those as our North Stars in terms of how do we get at driving competition? How do we get at driving the underlying cost of care? There are a number of experts out there that have also looked at, what are the drivers? I know recently the American Academy of Actuaries even presented at the NAIC. And, they really look at as drivers of healthcare, in addition to the potential expiration of the enhanced premium tax credits, which do drive affordability for so many Americans, is, the issues as it relates to medical trend. So, as the prices are going up, as more individuals are utilizing that unit of price, those are putting upwards pressure on healthcare costs. Provider costs. So, contracting and provider consolidation certainly has a significant impact on healthcare cost. Prescription drugs, I mentioned as, almost a quarter of every healthcare dollar. Items like specialty drugs and all the new drugs that are coming to market are certainly cost drivers in that. Inflation. All of those things are having upwards pressure on cost. And, I think what's important is to understand that it's not just health plans that are saying this, but that, actuaries who, this well, who are, certifying and ensuring that rates are actuarially sound. The cost of insurance not only is required to be actuarially sound, but it needs to be actuarially sound so that those are, there for, providers and patients. But those are things that experts and subject matter experts at large are saying this is what's driving price. And, you'll hear the theme from me here today with the potential termination of those enhanced premium tax credits. Those, again, will have a real impact on individuals that are purchasing in the individual market.
Yeah.
Again, that is really where Congress has the opportunity to act to make sure that piece of the affordability remains true to Americans.
Yeah. I know when I was in D.C., I think that was in April or May, speaking with our federal delegation. It was our fly-in. All the commissioners come in to talk about the different insurance issues in our states. And I was using the terminology of a glide path. Like, I understand that these tax credits need to go away, but let's not have a cliff. Let's have a glide path over a 2 or 3 year period. So providers, plans, everybody can adjust to that, and we won't have this shock to the system and the risk that I think this total termination that is at least on the table now happens. I know that...
And consumers would understand that too. Right? There's a tremendous amount of education that I think needs to be done just to make sure that consumers are aware of what is going to happen.
Yeah. Talking about those rate increases and the healthcare costs, thanks for walking through that. You guys have a great graphic on that. Always do. I know the dollar bill with just how to, I'm sure the folks can find that on your website. It's a great little graphic. But, on average nationally, I know the weighted average increase is 23%. That's not a small amount. And I know in our state, I think we're going to see even more than that on our averages, but that is being driven by those healthcare costs, which there are really great things happening out there within healthcare, right? Some great, I know I attended a meeting actually with our RFK Jr. in South Carolina talking about this sickle cell gene therapy. And it's wonderful. It's life-changing for people to the tune of like $3 million per treatment for an individual. And it is life-changing. So our difficulty, I think, that we're having, and even in this conversation, is we don't have a healthcare crisis. We have a healthcare financing issue here that we need to figure out how to deal with. So that's what we're trying to do. As far as AHIP goes, and you are focused on health plans, anything out there that would be helpful for consumers with AHIP? Or are you really just focused on the health plans and your constituency there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, in terms of, them thinking about shopping, right, for November the 1st. I mentioned the notices that will certainly come out from health plans here soon. The other thing is we know that there are many health plans, really putting together robust consumer pieces so that there's a good understanding of those costs. We also understand, that I think some states generally are doing some really good education around that. But I do think it's just going to be really important for individuals to understand how some of these things are going to impact them from a price perspective, because they will be making those decisions. And, the other thing that I would mention, and you talked earlier about the domino effect. Certainly, again, we're sort of focused on the individual market and the individuals that are purchasing there today. But we know from just an insurance market impact perspective, as one market is impacted here, if you see costs go up for individuals and there's decisions about foregoing health insurance and there's then impact on risk pools, those are things that will have impacts on other insurance market. So not just your individual market, but the employer market. So as providers all across this country are going to be dealing with implementation of not only House Resolution 1, HR 1, and all the changes that will mean to providers, but they will also be working their way through having a different potential set of individuals that are seeking care from them that may not have insurance. They're going to be uninsured, and their uncompensated care will go up. And as you think about those things, as providers then look for other places to help supplement those funding sources in other places, they will, cost shifting will happen. And so employers purchasing health insurance, potentially other markets purchasing health insurance or healthcare services, I should say, from that provider community will see impact. And so that's really, I think what is before us all, again, just in terms of how important it is to that Congress act and extend those so that, we can really sort of think through, how that's going to impact other markets and try to mitigate that.
Yeah.
And I should also say, health plans are doing, everything that they can in their power to try to shield and protect consumers from those high costs. But as you said, ultimately at the end of the day, health insurance costs are driven by underlying health prices.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, speaking of those of rates, I think something that warrants being discussed briefly here is in the health insurance space, we have something in place that is done in my world. We regulate all different kinds of insurance. Nowhere except the health insurance space do we have this process where there is a upfront actuarial rate review where those rates are being reviewed and making sure that they are actuarially sound. And then on the back end of that, now a lot of people may not know that, individuals may not know that on the back end, there are no excessive profits. If you call excessive profits, those have to be returned to the policyholders. There is a medical loss ratio minimum required that was part of the Affordable Care Act. And so any comment on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I just appreciate you mentioning that. I do think that that's an area that most people don't really fully understand. And I sort of refer to it as sort of bookend, regulation on the health insurance industry. We are the only industry within that health care ecosystem that has our prices regulated really on the front and the back end. You mentioned that rates have to be actuarially sound and justified by actuaries who are certifying that actuarial justification to departments of insurance. And then, as you said, on the back end, if adequate amounts are not spent on those medical costs. So essentially, if the price wasn't right on the front end and it on the back end, those dollars are returned back. And so I think that is really important for folks to remember. Again, the only industry in the entire healthcare ecosystem. And when you sort of think back to what the underlying drivers of healthcare are, I do think that that's a really important point.
Yeah. And I think that, within that space, or when that comes out, let's say a state has an average rate increase of 30%, there will be an outcry about excessive profits or that sort of thing, which is why I mentioned that there are controls in place with the health insurance space that really just don't allow that to happen, excessive profits. I mean, they cap what can be utilized for administrative costs and utilization management and marketing and et cetera. A percentage needs to be spent on medical care, period. And so there are those controls in place. So,
and the other thing I would just mention real quick, too, and you sort of alluded to it, the other thing that the health insurance has to adhere to, not only all the federal requirements, some of which we're talking about, but also all the state requirements. So, for example, if an insurance product has to be built a certain way because a certain state has mandate a certain kind of coverage, those are all things that have to be built into the price. They're not things that health plans can decide whether or not they want to build into the price, but because of those actuarial principles and that actuarial justification that takes place, those things have to be built into the price. And so I do think it's really important as we think about those drivers. That is another area I think the American Academy of Actuaries did note. Remember that there are all these other things like trend and inflation, and those other sort of provider challenges or that are increasing costs. But it is also important to remember that each state's regulation as it relates to coverage that has to be included in that is important.
Yeah, and when I was in the legislature just up the street, every year there's bills that would come through on additional health insurance mandates requiring companies to pay for this or requiring companies to pay 100% for that. All good things for certain people or for the constituent of the legislator that's bringing that forward. But we've got to think a little bit bigger picture than that. Yes, that will help that person or that 0.25% of people, but each one of those is an increasing cost, and therefore folks drop off on the other end of that who then can't afford that coverage. At some point, there's tipping points there. So we are pretty much out of time. We kind of got in the weeds, and I guess I'm showing my health insurance nerdness here, but we could probably talk a lot longer. If someone wanted information with AHIP, and yes. Tell us where they could go.
Please, appreciate that, ahip.org. There are a number of resources, including the healthcare dollar that you mentioned. Appreciate that. Always appreciate the opportunity to be here. And, I do have to mention the really great work at the NEIC through your chairmanship at the B Committee, and certainly the NEIC's work on this important issue, the enhanced premium tax credit. So thank you.
Good. We'll probably carve that out later. But hey, that's okay. Glen Mulready, Mulready Minute Podcast. But listen, if you need information, you're an individual, you're going to be enrolling. OID.ok.gov is our website. 800-522-0071. 800-522-0071 is our phone number. You have questions just about health insurance. We have a consumer assistance area that could answer your life and health questions, as well as your property and casualty, but on this topic, health insurance. So lots of great information on there. Enrollment period is coming. As you've heard here, lots of changes. Be asking questions, get online, do some reading, see how that's going to impact you. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Miranda, thank you for being on. Appreciate you coming into town for this short time and sharing your expertise.
Appreciate it.
So that wraps up another Mulready Minute podcast. We will see you next time.
If you found this episode informative, please subscribe and share with your colleagues. Visit oid.ok.gov/podcast. Let us know what topics you would like to hear about. Until next time, take care from the Oklahoma Insurance Department.